What's up, you guys? It's Numi, and I wanted to get on here today because I'm trying to get these videos out in a timely manner. You guys are asking lots of questions. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on my videos, and so I feel like I should put as many videos as I can out if they're helpful to anyone. But just as a disclaimer, I want to say that whatever videos I'm putting out, this is the things that I have chosen to do for myself. And I am by no way encouraging anyone to take the same path that I took, or do the same things that I'm doing. I am just sharing with you what I did, and it just worked for me. Everybody does, different things, and this is just what I have chosen to do for myself. And thank God it did pay off. So, one of the main questions that I have received over the past few days is how did I approach this whole match process that led me to applying to so many programs. And so I'm going to try to make this video in under 10 minutes, of course. But before we get started, please subscribe to my channel. Please go ahead and just thumbs up this video and get ready to write some comments or ask some more questions down in the comment section. So my approach to the match process started long before match. It actually started in January 2020. And, I knew that I had obstacles that I had to deal with. And so I did not want to wait to the last minute for anything. And on top of me having my own obstacles, meaning that number one, I did not have any research. I had research experience, but no published research or anything like that. I had volunteer experience, so that was good. I had, a work history in a clinical setting for several years because I'm a registered dietitian. So, that was also good. But I didn't have a high step score. My step 1 score, as I've mentioned before, was fairly low. And my step 2 score was okay, only because of the increase that I received. And a lot of programs usually were not taking step 2 so serious as they were taking step 1. Now that is changing because of the changes that have come about because of, I don't know, the pandemic, or just in general, they wanted, to end up changing step 1 to a pass fail. That's what's happening. So step 2 is going to have a lot more weight. And so now you really have to do very well on step 2. But for us, this cycle, I don't know if that was really truly the case, right? So I knew that I had obstacles, and I also had an advisor that wasn't very encouraging and just always put me down at every moment that he could. And so when you have someone like that weighing on your shoulder, it's very hard to stay positive and be optimistic about things. And so, unfortunately, there was nothing I could really do about that because he was the one that was assigned to me. And, I had to check in with him ever so often. I tried to minimize that contact, but I did still have to check in with him ever so often. So because I knew that from the beginning, I knew I had a lot of footwork to do. So January 2020, I started putting all that stuff together with the programs that I was interested in applying. I created a list of programs. Now, geographically, I tried to stay within my resident state, which I had 2 states that I was a resident of. So I tried to stay within those states initially. And I knew right off the bat that I was going to be applying to dual specialties, only because I knew that that would give me more of a chance of matching. And so I went through all of the specialties and all of those programs and created my list. The resources that I used for that were Frida, which is free. I think you just have to have maybe a membership to AMA, but it was free. For the most part, I was able to access it. And then I use Residency Explorer. I also use that. And to me, you have to give and take those those platforms, because sometimes the information that's on there is not updated. So if the programs don't provide the information to these different entities that we're using for resources, then that information can be outdated and be incorrect. So I ended up having to call programs and program coordinators and even the directors and all of that to find out what were their minimum scores. So that took a long time, but I used those two resources, and then finally I ended up using Match a Resident, which I had to pay for that. And Match a Resident was good because I was able to kind of narrow down the programs that I would be able to apply to based off of my step score. And that's what I use that for. But Residency Explorer also does the same thing. It just, it takes more time because you are actually going through each and every one of those programs to kind of figure that out. And it's the same thing for Frida. You have to go through each and every one of those programs to kind of figure that out. So Match a Resident was good for that, to try to narrow down things. And then I was able to go to Residency Explorer or Frida to just look at all of the stats of the program and the information that I was trying to obtain. Once I did that, I also looked at a list that my school provided called a probable all in or out program. And that is basically like a pre-match program. So those programs now are very few and far between, but there's still some programs out there that participate in a pre-match, meaning that they don't participate in ERAS. So they're not with the whole match process or anything like that. They basically offer you a position outside of the match, and then it depends on what you're trying to do, whether you want to accept or decline that position. If you accept that position, then you cannot participate in the actual match process. That would be your job when you finish school. So I went down that list that was provided as well. I contacted a lot of those programs, and our list actually was outdated. And so a lot of those programs that were currently on the list, they were no longer actually participating in that pre-match system. They were all basically with ERAS and now participating in the NRMP match. But there were some programs on there that were still participating in the pre-match. Most of those were like in New York, New Jersey, and I think a few in Florida. There were some new programs that definitely were still doing that as well. And this was with the specialties that I was interested in. So I did that as well. The next thing I tried to make sure that I did is prepare for the SOAP as well. So I made sure that I got a letter of recommendation from every single rotation that I went to. And I would ask for that letter of recommendation fairly early, like probably within a few days of me being at that rotation. I would approach my attending or my preceptor or whoever was over me and, just explain that, I would really like a letter of recommendation with this rotation. Would you be willing to give me a letter of recommendation? And most of the time they were like, yeah, sure. Just, as long as you're on time, as long as you're doing what you're told and, just maintaining your professionalism, like we usually give students letters of recommendation. So I never had a problem obtaining any type of letter of recommendation. So I had a letter of recommendation for every single specialty. And I ended up actually getting multiple letters of recommendations for each specialty. And that was my preparation for SOAP. And then I started working on my personal statements very early on because I'm not a great writer. So I knew that I would need some help with that. And I ended up hiring just an editing company just to edit what I was writing and kind of help me put my thoughts together. And it was very helpful doing that. If you're able to do that, I definitely suggest do that if you are not a good English writer and your grammar is not that good. So I also did that. So I had a personal statement as well for basically every specialty. My personal statements though were not very different. The meat of the statement was, basically the same throughout each personal statement, but there were little tweaks in the statement that would just cater toward family medicine or internal medicine or psychiatry or OBGYN. Like, I really just tried to have a personal statement ready for, whatever was about to happen. If I was going to be matching, that was going to be for my ERAS application, or if I was going to have the soap, I would have those things already prepared. So that was basically my approach. And I also tried to make sure that I did very well on my shelf exams, because actually the programs have access to your MSPE, which is basically like an overview of how you did during your clinical rotations, and that would show like your grade that you got on your shelf exam, or it will be explaining like, what type of student you were and all of that. So I just made sure I did very well on my shelf exams as well, which most shelf exams I got, A or B. I think only had one C on one shelf exam. I think it was with pediatrician. Yeah, that was in pediatrics that I had a C. But it was a C plus, but still I got a C. That was my second one, my second rotation. Or was it my first one? I'm sorry, that was my first rotation. So I really just didn't know how to approach the shelf exams. And, once I figured it out, like, it was no going back, and I never got another C. So, but yeah, that's basically how I approached it. Just to break it down, if you didn't get all of that, to summarize what I just said, I started very early on, January 2020, with getting my list together of all the programs, contacting the program directors or the program coordinators via telephone or email. And not all respond, but some will respond to you. Those are the ones that you want to try to create some type of relationship with. And that's what I did. And, using all those resources that were available to me, Frida, Residency Explorer, and even Match a Resident, getting my letters of recommendation for each specialty, because I needed to make sure that I was prepared to SOAP. And also writing a personal statement for each of your specialties. And if there's a program out there that you really, really want to go to, your personal statement needs to be geared toward that program. So I had several personal statements, a lot of general ones, but I did have a few personal statements that were geared toward that particular program. And honestly, the ones where I really put the most effort in, those were the ones that I got a lot of interviews. I got the interviews. And so, not all of my interviews were like that. A lot of them still use my general one, but I would say it was about 7 interviews that I received. And I really think the personal statement that I put on my application for that particular program made a big difference, because those programs knew my personal statement like no other. And you need to make sure that you know your personal statement as well. And so, make sure whatever you're saying is true, because you need to be able to talk about those things and have a conversation about it. And trust me, even though this was virtual, they can tell if you're making stuff up. You can tell if they're being genuine. I mean, people were worried about that. And maybe not everybody's able to tell that, but I could definitely tell if people were genuine, or if they were just, shooting a bull or what have you. And I was able to tell, okay, this is a program that I really like, or this is a program that I just really couldn't get with, But yeah, so those are the things that you probably should think about doing if that's what you want to do, but that is what I did. I know I had a few people that reached out to me that had to SOAP, and one of the main things that was like a problem, they didn't have letters of recommendations. Because they were not planning to SOAP. And so I really encourage people, it doesn't matter what your score is or how you felt about the interview and all of that, still just prepare yourself just in case, because you just never really know. And you don't want to be in that situation where you don't have the things that you need to submit when it is time to SOAP. So yeah, so I didn't stick to my 10-minute, I'm at 14. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. And if you guys have any other questions, or comments, just leave them down below. Please keep the comments positive. I am a positive person, and I don't like to have negative energy around me. And so if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't have to leave a comment at all. And I would appreciate that a lot. Okay, so thank you so much, and I will talk to you guys later. Stay tuned for the next video. Bye.